আনিলে কারে সাথে তোমার ব্রহ্ম তেজ দীপ্ত আনন পুরুষ সিংহ কে কুমার আনিলে কারে সাথে তোমার বলো গো ঠাকুর বীরেশ্বর অমিত বীর্য সুরসেনাপতি যিনি ঐশ্বর্য বীরেশ্বর অমিত বীর্য সুরসেনাপতি যিনি ঐশ্বর্য জ্ঞানী গরিয়ান তাপস প্রধান জ্ঞানী গরিয়ান তাপস প্রধান প্রেমে ভাসমান নয়ন তার বলো গো ঠাকুর বলো না আমারে আনিলে কারে সাথে তোমার ত্যাগে সুখ দে প্রেমেতে নারদ বুদ্ধের মতো হৃদয় যার জ্ঞানে শিব গুরু শঙ্কর সম সে কেন লুটায় পদে তোমার ওঙ্কারে যায় কাঁপে ত্রিভুবন সে কেন মাগিছে তোমার শরণ ওঙ্কারে যায় কাঁপে ত্রিভুবন সে কেন মাগিছে তোমার শরণ তোমারি আশিস করিয়ার ধারণ তোমারি আশিস করিয়ার ধারণ সে কি ধরিবে ধরার ভার বলো গো ঠাকুর বলো না আমারে আনিলে কারে সাথে তোমার ব্রহ্ম তেজ দীপ্ত আনন পুরুষ সিংহ কে কুমার আনিলে কারে সাথে তোমার বলো গো ঠাকুর
Feedback.
Yeah, no, that's sure, it will get better.
Sarve Sukhina Santu Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhamapnaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from illness. May all beings see what is good in others. May no one have to undergo any suffering. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we had a wonderful puja yesterday, and I thought it was I have been coming to Raleigh for maybe 4 years now, and this was the best.
Yeah.
Decorations and everything, singing, it was just awesome. Every year is very good, but it keeps getting better.
Very good.
This was the
Thanks
grandest.
Thanks to the little children that were walking around with the signs.
Yes,
Perfect.
I didn't know what the reason was. Then Samrat explained to me.
Yeah,
But,
it was very good.
you see, you have to be creative sometimes. Just come up with some other solution. If requesting politely by an adult doesn't work,
Try a child.
yeah, try a child. And very low key, you're just holding it. You're not telling them anything, you're just stating the obvious with a sign. So it was very good. Recently, somebody came to the society, not a devotee, but one of those people who are.
Having problem, a little bit higher up, a little bit better.
You are having a problem listening? Okay. No, Shivanand, that's not the, I think we have to get it closer.
Archie.
Another possibility is to sit closer to the speaker
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
Because I can hear myself, it's pretty
Yeah.
loud.
Is that the original speaker?
ওইখানে যে স্পিকারটা আছে ওটার পাশে বসুন গিয়ে
I can hear now.
Okay,
ওকে
okay. Let me just get it a little bit. Just 1 inch lower. Yes. Yes. So somebody visited us, and not a devotee, but a friendly, probably Christian person who is curious about Vedanta. He was university professor, and he started asking me questions like a quick fire. And now that may be a method that the professors have, I don't know, but it was, before I could finish my answer, the new question came. And I was like, whoa, I'm not used to this. Because people are very kind to the Swamis, they will ask one question and wait. And we have plenty of time to answer. But this guy was like, boom, 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 boom. So his first question was, what is humility? And so it took me by surprise. Just what is humility? And I thought, well, humility is absence of desire. True humility is absence of desire. Then he said, he was a little puzzled. And he said, how can we get humility? How can we become humble? Then I said, you don't set out to become humble. There is nothing that, in our tradition, there is nothing that we do that we say, okay, I want to be humble, so I will do this and this and this. Humility is a byproduct. It comes as a result of our spiritual practice. Again, he was a little puzzled by that answer. Then he said, so what is spiritual practice? What do you mean by spiritual practice? And I said, look, spiritual practice can be many things, but in a general way, we are trying to tune into a higher power. And how we do it, we have many choices. We believe there is a higher power, and we have to connect. We are all connected to some extent, but we have to connect in a better way. So that is spiritual practice, to try to connect with a higher power. Then he said, but we are already that. We already are that power. And I thought, aha, you have been watching YouTube. Because this is the new, it's not a fashion, but it's a good thing that YouTube is providing this message from the East, that we are divine. It is a good thing, but it also, it has been simplified so much. That is, you are divine, you are that already. It's almost like you don't have to do anything. You are Brahman already, so don't worry. And it's oversimplified. So I said to him, yes, you're right. We agree with you. We are that already. We are that higher power already. But let me ask you one question. When you have a toothache, do you say, I am that, or do you go to the dentist? So he said, I go to the dentist. So I said, you see the difference? One thing is what you believe, another thing is what you are now, our present condition. So yeah, we believe we are divine, but our present condition is, if I have a toothache, I rush to the dentist, and I forget all about my divinity. So that is our problem. So he couldn't argue with that. He said, yeah, I can see your point. So I said, okay, so this is our problem. We have a divine dimension that we feel intuitively. We feel we are divine. We feel we are spirit. If we are spiritually minded, we will feel that. At the same time, we find ourselves in this condition. We are attached to a particular body. We are attached to a particular way of thinking, and we cannot break free from that. So what is spiritual practice? To answer your question, it is just trying to overcome that situation, that I am confined to a certain body, and I am used to a certain way of thinking, and cannot break from that way of thinking, what we call mind. So spiritual practice is nothing but trying to overcome these limitations. And as we try to overcome these limitations, without even trying, without even attempting to become humble, we become humble. So I said, this is a little different from the Christian approach, that we have to make a deliberate effort to put ourselves last. Sometimes the Christian saints, they punish themselves and they do all kinds of things to become humble. And this, another thing is the absolute obedience. It's just a sign of humility. But actually, why should we be obedient when things don't make sense? Why should we punish ourselves? So, the message of Vedanta is, do your spiritual practice sincerely. Try to overcome these limitations. Humility will come by itself, because when we overcome our belief that we are just one body and one mind, that little connection to one place becomes diluted. So what would have been, I am so and so, becomes, I am one with others. I am not so much worried about myself. I begin to see myself in others. If I see myself in others, naturally I will become humble. Why should I be the first when I am in others? Then we begin to feel we are all together. And the welfare of others is my own welfare. That is the most natural way to be humble. Not to punish ourselves. Not to try to just force ourselves to be unnatural. The natural way to be humble is to be one with everybody else. Then it is natural humility. Well, the problem is that this connection with the body and mind are very hard to break. There is a statement from Sri Ramakrishna that is very puzzling. You will not find it in the Gospel, but you will find it in the book on M. You know, M recorded the Gospel, and eventually M became a holy man, and people used to come to see him and to listen to him about Sri Ramakrishna. And there was a Swami who was his main admirer, and this Swami, he wrote many books on his, or he heard from M about Sri Ramakrishna. So in those books, I think it's called M, the Apostle and the Evangelist in English. M says that Sri Ramakrishna said the following: Avidya Maya is stronger than Vidya Maya. That means ignorance, this Maya, this idea that we are the body and the mind, is stronger than the Maya of knowledge, than this divine Maya that gives us illumination. So that is very puzzling. Why would Sri Ramakrishna say that? That Avidya Maya is stronger than Vidya Maya. Well, how many saints do we come across in our lives? Hardly anybody. We are all preoccupied with our own little happiness and misery, our own problems. We become engrossed in our own little worlds. We cannot afford to think of others. We have enough with our own problems. So naturally, it seems to make sense that Avidya Maya is stronger than Vidya Maya. But that is on the surface. Underneath, there is this divine current. We are all one. We have to discover that. Like the Upanishad says, Satyameva Jayati, Nandritam. In the long run, truth triumphs. Although ignorance seems to be stronger, in the end, even if it takes many lifetimes, in the end, we will realize our divinity. Vedanta says, it is our destiny. We all will become free. In fact, we are free already. It's a matter of remembering our true nature. So how can Vedanta improve our lives? I think that is the topic announced today. How can it improve our lives? One common complaint that we hear is that Vedanta is not very practical. It's all high philosophy, that we are the Atman, we are divine, but how can it help us in our daily life? I think Vedanta helps us in many ways, in more ways than we realize. The first thing Vedanta does for us, it changes our worldview, how we look upon the world, how we look upon others, how we look upon ourselves. That itself is a great help. The way we look at things changes how things are, at least for us, in a subjective way. There are many examples of that. Take, for instance, in the ancient times, the constellations of the stars in the sky were very important for navigation, for setting the times of the crops, sowing the seeds, etc. They paid a lot of attention of the position of the stars in the sky. So they would say, okay, the constellations such and such, it's in this position, so we should do this, or we are here in the high seas navigating, this is where we are because these stars are in this position. So these are all things that we made up, human beings. We saw a few stars, a cluster of stars, and we call it the Great Bear. There is no bear in the sky. There's just a bunch of stars. and we imagine there is a bear, and we call it the Great Bear. And then, next time we look up, we'll see that. We'll see the bear, or the Southern Cross. So we look up and we see the cross. There's no cross there. But we have learned to project that from our minds, and we say, oh, that's the Southern Cross. So that is how we change the world, through our own perception of it. I'll give you another example. There's this tree, Nagalingam, in India. That's a beautiful flower. So the name is Nagalingam. Naga is the snake, and Lingam is the Shiva Lingam. So the flower, as most of you know, resembles a Shiva Lingam. Here is the Shiva Lingam, and here is the Naga just protecting it. So it looks like the image of Shiva in many Shiva temples. So these flowers grow on the tree, and you can imagine the parents tell the kids, look at this flower, this is the Shiva Lingam, the Naga Lingam. Let me show you why. Here is the Naga, here is the Shiva, and this is Naga Lingam. So for the rest of their lives, these kids will think of this tree and this flower, and it will remind them of Shiva. This is Naga Lingam. The same tree, later on it produces big fruit. It's like a big brown balls just hanging from the trunk. So when the British saw that, they call it cannonball tree. Because the fruit resembles a cannonball. It really does. So you can imagine some parents, they say, oh, you know, look at the tree. You know what it's called? Cannonball tree. You know why? Look at the cannonballs hanging from it. It's the same tree. For somebody it reminds them of Shiva. For somebody else it's cannonball. So we do this all the time. We are projecting with our own understanding, with our own subjective point of view, what we see outside. If we are miserable, we will tend to look at the miserable side of life. If we are happy, we will tend to see the happy side of life. Of course, we know that the world is a mixture of both, happiness and misery. And if we are happy, we could be in the midst of misery and still be happy. And if we are unhappy, we can have everything going in our favor and still be unhappy. So it is amazing to what extent we can really change our environment just by the way we look at things, by the way we understand things. So Vedanta changes our perspective. Therefore it changes our view of the world. Therefore it changes the world for us, at least for the subject, not in an absolute way. The world will continue to be what it is, but for us it has changed. It was, in the beginning it was a hostile, scary world, full of dangers. Now it becomes divine. I see divinity everywhere. I feel a connection with everything. So it becomes a world of cooperation. What can I do for you? And if you can help me, I am willing to receive your help. So changing the perspective is a big deal, but it's very subjective. So when we say, for instance, what is God? Now that is a big question. What is God? And the answer will vary according to what is your faith and what is your upbringing, what is your religion. And even within the same religion, if you are a Vedantin, you can give so many different answers. You can say God is Brahman, you can say God is Ramakrishna, God is Krishna, Shiva, anything. And they are all correct. But Vedanta says, ultimately, Prajnanam Brahma, the Upanishad says, one of the Mahavakyas, Prajnanam Brahma. What is God? What is Brahman? It is nothing but intelligence. Now, when you say God is intelligence, there is no argument. You are not talking about Allah or Krishna or Shiva or the Divine Mother. Intelligence is a very universal thing. So Vedanta tells us that ultimately, whether you love Sri Ramakrishna or you love Mother Kali or you love Ramachandra, God is the intelligence underlying all these divinities. All these divinities arise from that ocean of intelligence. Imagine an ocean of consciousness, and bubbles arise from that water of consciousness. So one bubble is called Jesus, another bubble is called Ramakrishna. But there is no difference. The bubble is made of the same water, it's the same consciousness. And then eventually that bubble merges back into the water. And what remains? Consciousness. So all these avatars are nothing but expressions of this one intelligence. So that is God. So that is one way that Vedanta helps us. We take it for granted. Those of us who are Vedantins, we take it for granted that God is Brahman, that God is consciousness. But when you think about it, it's a huge blessing. We are free from all this narrowness, this dogmatism that God can only be this and not that. No, God can be anything. And also transcends everything. Because God is pure consciousness, pure intelligence. That is one way that Vedanta helps us. Sometimes I like to think that our God is the God of atheists as well. Because we call God Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means existence. Chit means intelligence, consciousness. Ananda means bliss. So when the sages wanted to explain, to put in words what they experienced, that is not easy. How to explain that which transcends words and thoughts? And the closest approximation they could come up with was this: existence, consciousness, bliss. Everybody is worshipping this God, knowingly or unknowingly. When you say existence, every being wants to exist. Swami Nirakarananda said, even the little worm just crawling, if it sees a danger approaching, it will wriggle out of danger. From the worm to the human being, every living being is trying to stay alive. Don't we all? We are always trying to stay alive. If there is any problem with the body, we want to fix it immediately. Nobody wants to be in a state of illness. So we want to be alive. It is hardwired in us. We don't want to die. And that applies to every being. Any living being that you threaten, they will just run away or fight you. Either way. So that is Sat. Whether you are an atheist or a believer, we are following that. We want to exist. We want to be alive. Then Chit. Everybody wants to understand. Everybody wants to know. Even the atheist, they may say, I don't believe in God, but I want to know very much the mystery of the universe. You know, what is in the stars? What is in the ocean? What is everywhere? How things work? Even the non-believer wants to know. This thirst for knowledge, this thirst to understand the universe is in everyone, in the believer and in the atheist. And then finally, the quest for happiness. You don't need to be a believer in God to pursue happiness. In fact, the atheists are even more eager to pursue a life of happiness and enjoyment. So whether we believe in God or not, we are looking for this bliss, this joy. Now, as Vedantins, we have this deeper understanding that one thing is the pleasant and another thing is the good. So we know that the pleasant and the unpleasant, they alternate all the time. You can have a good meal and there is some enjoyment in that. You eat too much, then it turns very quickly to be unpleasant and we get indigestion. So like that, there is always a tipping point and it goes from pleasant to unpleasant very quickly. And again from unpleasant to pleasant. Say you are a devotee and yesterday you were working so hard and somebody told you to do something extra and then you were working very, very hard and you were very tired. But then you got joy because you got it done and you're so happy. So from unpleasant, you were, working too hard, it became pleasant. That, I have the satisfaction that I did my job and I'm so happy that I could do it. So both ways, from pleasant to unpleasant and from unpleasant to pleasant. It just switches back and forth. We know that. We care for the good. What is good for me? Life will have to go on through this pleasant and unpleasant. There is no way out. But the atheists, they are looking for the pleasant only. They don't have this understanding. So this is a great blessing that we have in our lives, to have this understanding that look beyond what is pleasant or unpleasant. Look for meaning. Look for purpose. If it is unpleasant, but it has a purpose, it changes the whole thing. We don't mind. We don't mind hardship if it is with meaning, with a purpose. The second question that we can ask ourselves, first one was, what is God? And Vedanta told us, Prajnanam Brahma. God is intelligence. And we have seen how many benefits we get out of that. The second question is, who am I? It seems like all of us should know the answer. We are all grown up. Many of us big doctors and engineers, and still we don't know who we are. So it seems like the most basic question, isn't it? Like, before we learn so many things about what is this and what is that, shouldn't we worry about who am I? Of course, we have a name and we have a form, that's all good, but the form is changing all the time. So who is the guy who got this name and who is changing all the time? Now, this biggest of questions, most people die without the answer. We never find the answer. We live our lives, we go through so many things, and the main question remains unanswered. Who am I? So Vedanta gives a straightforward answer. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. And what is Brahman? Well, let us remember the first answer. Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is intelligence, pure intelligence. And I am Brahman. Therefore, I am pure intelligence. That is my real nature. So upon this pure intelligence that we are, we have piled up so many things. The mental and the physical is superimposed on pure consciousness, pure intelligence. And it's very difficult to just excavate and remove all what is on the surface and find who we really are. But when we have this understanding that, at least intellectually, even if we haven't actually realized, that we have that understanding that I am divine, I am Brahman. Again, it changes our perspective. What is better, to think I'm a sinner, I'm hopeless, I'm worthless, or to think I am divine? Of course, it's better to think I'm divine. Because, as we saw earlier, the mind is subject to suggestions. If we think we are divine, we will eventually become divine. If we think we are hopeless, we will eventually become hopeless. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, the wretch who keeps repeating, I'm a sinner, that rascal really becomes a sinner. It doesn't help. And Swami Nirakarananda said, you cannot wash away mud, with dirty water. You have to bring clean water to wash out the mud. What is the clean water? Is this positive thought, I am divine. I am Brahman. Now the problem is that what happens when we try to practice that, I am Brahman? It's just very hard. If we have a toothache, that pain, that ache, is originating in the tooth. We know that. And the dentist will address the tooth. It will not touch anything else. All the dentist needs to do is fix the tooth. However, when we have a toothache, we say, I have a toothache. We become one with the tooth for the time being. And until that is fixed, we have no peace of mind. And the same thing, we can say, I am depressed. Where is the depression? It is certain thoughts that arise in my mind, and they create this feeling, this negative feeling, and as a result of that, I say, I am depressed. So, really, the depression is nothing but some thoughts in the mind. But we identify with those thoughts, and we say, I am depressed. So this is the problem. I have a toothache, I am depressed, I am happy. We are constantly identifying with things we are not. That is why it's so difficult to practice I am Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna says, in this age, it's very difficult to follow Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge, because our body consciousness is too strong. We cannot get out of it. So, Sri Ramakrishna's solution is, be a bhakta, be a devotee. And some people think, oh, that is like second class, I want to be Brahman. Who can practice that? Swami Sri Ramakrishna appointed none else than Swami Vivekananda for that path. He used to make him read the Ashtavakra Samhita and other books. But for others, he wouldn't let them read those books. No, you belong to the personal God. Who can be a Vivekananda? Very few, very few. For the vast majority of us, we follow the path of bhakti. We worship God. But side by side, we also like to read about jnana. It's very helpful to hear these positive thoughts that we are divine. So an intellectual understanding of these ideas is very helpful. But when it comes to the practical side, we bow down. We bow down to God. So this is, Swami Nirakarananda said, the ideal combination is a combination of heart and brain. Too much brain, and it has some problems. Too much emotion, and it has some problems. Combine both. The Vedantic understanding that we are divine, that we are all one, and also the practical, spiritual practice of worshipping God. I am a devotee. Let me do something with my hands. Let me show my understanding. Okay, I understood that we are divine. I understood that we are all one. Should it remain in just speaking? Where is the proof? Show me with your hands that you believe this. Do things for others. Worship God. Something. Then we are proving with actions what we believe in our minds. There's a nice expression in Vedanta to describe our condition, the condition of the human being. Chit, jara, granthi. What is the human being? Is a granthi, is a knot of chit and jada, matter and consciousness. Where matter and consciousness meet and become entangled, that is the human being, more than any other being. So how to disentangle this? It has become so closely tied up, that it's very hard to sever that knot and say, I am pure consciousness. We are this combination of consciousness and matter at the moment. So to find the real I is very difficult. Recently, our new Swamiji, a few months ago, we have a new Swamiji in St. Louis, and we had to get him his driver license, not driver license, but state ID. And it just so happened that my driver license was expiring, so I got the notification I have to renew it, and we had to do his also, so we went together to do that. So we did everything, all the testing and filling up the forms, etc. And at the end of it, I suddenly remember real ID, you know, that for flying, etc. So I just, in the last minute before she gave us the temporary driver license, that piece of paper, I said, oh, I forgot to ask you, is this real ID? She said, yes, it's real ID. And I said, what about the Swami? I forgot to ask you, is his real ID? She said, no, because of the visa restriction, his is not real ID. Immediately the Swami, what? It's not real ID? What are you giving me? And I said, no, Swami, it is real, it is the state ID, but it's not real ID. What do you mean? It was so confusing, because it just so happens that they call this real ID. But you can have, you may not have real ID, and still it is the real ID. So how to explain? Then I said, Swami, I'll explain to you later. Don't worry, it is okay. So it is confusing. Who am I? It is something similar. When we try to find the I, so many confusing things come along, you know. What am I? I am the body, am I the mind? Who is the I? It can be very confusing. There's a nice story of Nasruddin, that Sufi mystic. Once his neighbor found him looking for something outside his house at night. So he said, Nasruddin, what have you lost? I can help you to find it. He said, oh, I have lost the key to my house. Then the neighbor said, oh, where did you lose it? I can look for it with you. He said, I lost it inside the house. Then he said, then why are you looking for it outside? Oh, because inside it is dark. So it makes no sense at all. So this is a Sufi story that explains our condition. We are looking for the I, and we are looking for it outside. Why? Because inside is dark. It's a very deep story. Just because it's dark, it doesn't mean that we have to look outside. We know the key to solve the problem is inside, but it is dark. So we are wandering about here and there, looking for this guru and this lecture and that lecture, and the answer is inside all the time. But it is dark. We have to somehow find it in the darkness. Another way that Vedanta helps us is in our relationship with others. How to somehow improve our interpersonal relationships. We cannot be friends with everybody, we know that, because sometimes the other party does not want to be our friends. So What can we do in that case? You can give love, but you cannot force somebody to love you. It just doesn't work that way. So what does Vedanta have to say? Vedanta says, that Tvamasi, that thou art. What is that? That Brahman, that pure intelligence. So in other words, what you said about yourself, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, say it about the other person, the person in front of you. Tat Tvamasi. You are that. You don't have to tell them, you don't have to teach them, but in your mind, you treat them as such. Who is this person in front of me? Tat Tvamasi. You are that. You are Brahman. Just like I am divine, you are also divine. Otherwise, it's not fair. I am divine and you are nothing. That is not fair, right? So it has to be an even deal, that I am divine, but you are also divine. Then that will change our whole perspective. Patanjali gives a nice, some nice advice about how to deal with other people. We'll come across people who are happy, and to them we have to be friendly. That is what Patanjali says. Somebody's happy, just rejoice with them in their happiness. Don't be jealous. Be happy in their happiness. Maitri, friendliness. Now we come across people who are unhappy also. He says karuna, show compassion. But compassion to me doesn't sound like a very good translation. Understanding sounds better. If somebody is unhappy, have that empathy. Have that understanding. There is a reason why people are unhappy. They are not unhappy because they want to be unhappy. Generally, there is a reason. And if we understand, if we take the trouble to understand the source of their unhappiness, we will accept it and have no problem with it. Lincoln said something really beautiful. He said, I don't like that person. I should get to know them better. So many times we don't like somebody just because we don't understand them. We don't know them well enough. If we know them and understand them, we will accept them as they are. If somebody is unhappy, there is a reason for it. And nobody is unhappy because they want to. Generally, we believe in this Satchit Ananda. We believe that our natural state is joyful, is happy. That is our goal, that is our ideal. And any state of unhappiness or negativity is some temporary abnormality. Because there is a joy of being. There is a joy in existing. And if we are all right, we will experience that joy. And if we are unhappy, it's a temporary thing. There is some cause for it. Will you remove the cause? It will pass away. Then, when you come across someone virtuous, you find delight. You find a good devotee, a good Vedantin. You delight in their company. So that is another way. And finally, if somebody is wicked, we come across the wicked is another name for troublemakers, you can say. Somebody is a troublemaker. So be indifferent. Sometimes fighting with them is pointless. Being affected by their whatever troublemaking, it also will upset our peace of mind. Just ignore. I have seen that with many swamis. They practice this, and it really works. Somebody's a troublemaker. Sometimes we don't have any choice. Just ignore and retreat. Withdraw yourself. We don't have the power to change people. Then what can you do? Just withdraw yourself. So this is from the ancient times, the Patanjali advised. I think it's very, very practical even today in modern times. friendly with the happy, understanding with the unhappy, delighting in the virtuous, and ignoring the troublemakers. That is how we deal with others. But all the time we keep in our minds that Tvamasi, you are that. I am dealing with the divine in a human form or in any form. That brings us to the last Mahavakya. What is my place in the universe? What is my relationship with everything? The Vedanta says, I am Atma Brahma. I am means this Atman, this self, that you see in every living being, or in every object even, is nothing but Brahman. So it started by defining these four Mahavakyas we have mentioned. Started by defining what is God, Prajnana Brahma. God is pure intelligence. Then, who am I? Aham Brahmasmi. I am that Brahman. I am pure intelligence. Then who are you? Tattvamasi. You are that also. And finally, what is this self in everything? Nothing but Brahman. This Atman is Brahman. So, everything is this same pure intelligence that has been covered. So, in a human being, the veil is thinner, and we can see that intelligence really most manifest. In a table, the covering is very thick, but Vedanta says this table is Brahman also. This mic is Brahman. This is nothing but Brahman. The whole experience, whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you think, is nothing but that pure intelligence. And we are one with that. We are one with that ocean. So, although this sounds very philosophical and very high, as we said earlier, it changes our perspective of what the world is like, and that changes the world for us. So that helps us a lot in many ways. So this is a kind of a philosophical explanation of how Vedanta can help us. I haven't gone into any detail like you have to do this and you have to do that. It's more like a philosophical background to understand in how many ways Vedanta can help us that we take for granted, we don't even think about. So I think we can stop here. What do you think? It's almost an hour. If anybody wants to discuss anything, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I have two questions actually,
Sure.
which falls under the broader perspective of Vedanta. One is that recently Swami Sharvat